Malik Willis has been electric. Willis to the edge. Willis celebrates. Touchdown.
He's got a man wide open. Oh, touchdown.
Looking like Michael Vick right there.
I didn't even really watch football like that until like high school. I used to think it was boring.
The countdown to the NFL draft is ticking away. The combine has wrapped and pro days at college football training facilities have already taken place. Leading up to every April, there's always the question of who will be the first quarterback off of the board. Within the group of incoming signal callers, there has always been a dark horse, one top prospect that may have not come from the typical Power 5 school that has recently taken an upward trajectory. Sneaking up the list of the best available players is Malik Willis. This player, who has taken many different forks in the road, has recently shown scouts that he has all the potential to be a successful NFL quarterback. Today, let's talk about Malik Willis, former Liberty University quarterback and more than likely first-round draft pick in the upcoming NFL draft. Mic check 1 2 1 2. In just a few short weeks, the sports headlines could read something out of a movie where the hometown boy has his name called in the first round of the NFL draft and puts on the hat of the team that he grew up rooting for. This rarely happens. Aaron Rodgers wanted to be drafted by the San Francisco 49ers with the #1 overall pick. Tom Brady wanted to play for the San Francisco 49ers at a specific point in his career. As a matter of fact, the only time that I could think of a player actually getting drafted by the team that he grew up rooting for was Brady Quinn during the 2007 NFL draft. But if that storybook script does play out with Malik Willis's name being called by Roger Goodell and he stands on the stage in Las Vegas holding an Atlanta Falcons jersey, it will sure be something for the media to drool over.
What he's been striving for since he was 4 years old, that I want to play one day on Northside Drive. That was his thing, so hopefully he'll be able to play on Northside Drive.
That road is where Mercedes-Benz Stadium, home of the Atlanta Falcons, is located. Although Malik Willis didn't watch that much football growing up, his favorite memories were of the Atlanta Falcons and of a quarterback that we all grew up idolizing, Michael Vick, and the way he played the game when he wore the red and black. But Malik Willis would take a significantly more unconventional route to get to the point where he could be drafted into the NFL like Michael Vick did. That started by him playing pee-wee football at a young age and continuing into middle school, where he started working with quarterback coaches. In high school, Malik Willis dreamed of being the next Michael Vick, the next Cam Newton, the next Lamar Jackson. Westlake coaches were familiar with Cam Newton already, as Cam threw the football for their Atlanta area high school several years prior to Malik Willis. Newton is also familiar with Malik Willis as well, as he actually coached Malik on his 7-on-7 team and took on a mentor-type role with the quarterback whose characteristics were sort of like his own. Malik Willis listened to what his mentor had to carefully say, as Cam Newton was in the spot that Willis dreamed of soon being in. He was a NFL quarterback. Malik said of Cam Newton that he always gave me little nuggets of information that I could keep with me for the rest of my life. He's definitely been a big part of that. I mean, more than anything, he was telling us about stuff off the field, being careful in whatever we do, and taking advantage of what we have, and using your work ethic for your best advantage, trying to get where you're trying to go, and understand that you can't do what everybody else is doing if you're trying to get where they are not. Just focusing on those things more than anything. When we were on the 7-on-7 team, he'd tell us about that competition that we're going against, that 10% of what you're working against when you're working out and doing extra work. You're going against him one day a week. You're going against everybody else all the other days of the week. Yet at Westlake High School, just before his junior season, Malik Willis lost the starting quarterback position to a senior, and the coaching staff asked him to move to wide receiver. The teenager, who dreamed of being a signal caller for Westlake, just like Cam Newton was, agreed to the position change without a single complaint. Also, this wasn't the first time he was asked to change, as he had switched between offensive and defensive positions throughout his career on Westlake's freshman and JV teams. By staying humble and practicing hard, Malik Willis was given the starting quarterback position after 5 games. It was a point midway through his junior year, and though though he led his team on a win streak and into the playoffs, no power conference scholarships were offered his way. I wasn't a highly touted recruit. I wasn't able to get to all the summer camps, and I didn't have much film. I started 8 games. Prior to his senior year, a move from the Westlake area to Roswell meant that Malik could start as quarterback in an offense that showcased his arm strength and his ability to run at the same time. As a senior, he led his Roswell, Georgia high school team to the state title game while passing for 2,562 yards and rushing for 1,033 with 37 touchdowns. His coach, John Ford, recalls a specific throw of his during a playoff game, saying that we had a corner route on one side and a corner post on the other, and Malik stayed in the pocket, bouncing his feet and looking him off, and just waited and waited for the safety to break for the corner. Then he fires an absolute missile to the corner post. It was no rainbow. It never got more than 15 yards off the ground. There isn't a throw that's not in his bag. That safety and coverage wasn't just another high school player, it was Connor Hayward, younger brother of Steelers defensive lineman Cam Hayward, with Connor also being a participant at this year's NFL Draft Combine after a successful collegiate career at Michigan State. During his senior year, top schools and Major League Baseball, as he was also a solid baseball player as well, started to notice Malik Willis, but only one school offered him a scholarship at quarterback, and ironically, that was Auburn. Rated as a 3-star prep, Malik Willis enrolled at Auburn, a true football school where, like Cam Newton, he should get the chance to turn the head of pro scouts. He battled for the starting quarterback position but didn't get the call, playing mostly during blowouts, and any tape on him was primarily zone reads, even though he would have gotten the opportunity to become the starting quarterback at Auburn and the chance to showcase himself weekly in heated SEC battles. It just didn't work out for Malik Willis in 2019. And ultimately, this is where his story gets even better, because Malik Willis found himself taking a different route to an underdog type of school to be their starting quarterback. This time it was for a program that was not known for churning out NFL grades, as Malik Willis would enroll in a very liberal Christian school located in Lynchburg, Virginia by the name of Liberty University. The school played an independent football schedule and had never ranked in the top 25. It would be a sort of divine intervention that would get him there, continuing his tradition of taking the road less traveled, and ultimately, it would pay off in a very, very big way. Malik Willis didn't know much about the school, but when he checked his daily Bible verse app the day before his official visit to Liberty, his app displayed 2 Corinthians 3:17 that reads, "Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty." The next day, when Willis was inside of the Liberty football training facility, he looked around at his surroundings and saw that same verse printed in large letters on the wall. I'm like, ain't no way. I didn't even tell anybody that. I just kind of like kept it to myself. But I knew right then, I was like, yep, this is the place I'm supposed to go. Because he was not eligible to play right away due to the now obsolete NCAA transfer rule, Malik Willis worked on his mind and spirit and did some serious film study at the same time, gaining a new respect for the sport that he hoped to someday make his career. Malik's father, Harold Willis, told Fox 5 Atlanta,
he applied that year he sat out to himself. Of course, he was working, but like, who am I? Who's the man I'm gonna be? And that's what we see now. It's been a blessing for the simple fact that if he hadn't gone through what he's gone through, he wouldn't be who he is, you know. And the adversity that he faced, it kind of shaped and molded the character that he has now.
So I had to lead without being able to play on Saturdays, and I had to grow in the film room and just be taught how to be a better player.
In 2020, with Willis finally at a place where he felt comfortable as the leader of the Liberty Flames, he completed 64.2% of his passes, throwing for 2,260 yards and 20 touchdowns. He rushed for an additional 944 yards, leading the nation in quarterback rushing yards, and scored 14 touchdowns via his feet. Liberty finished with a 10-1 record, won the Cure Bowl, and the program had its first ever top 25 ranking as Malik Willis received many accolades. He was the Cure Bowl game MVP, tossing 4 touchdowns while throwing and passing for 137 yards each. Liberty beat Coastal Carolina, who was ranked as high as 9th in 2020 via an overtime battle, winning 37-34. Explosive and electrifying were now words that described the quarterback Malik Willis, and everyone was now talking about him as a future pro quarterback. Prior to the 2021 college football season, but what about his draft profile? Well, 2021 is where things would get really interesting for Malik Willis. Prior to the 2021 college football season, ESPN's Todd McShay had the 6-foot, 219-pound quarterback Malik Willis as his number 7 overall prospect, while Mel Kiper Jr. had him at number 15. Yet 2021 didn't have the numbers that someone hoping to be drafted in the top 10 should have put up. Willis threw for 1,105 passing yards and 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, and rushed for 418 yards and 6 touchdowns in Liberty's first 5 games. And this is where things would start to look bad for Malik Willis, because in 8 games he would throw 12 picks, including 3 interception games. Now, you could make the argument that unlike SEC schools, Malik Willis didn't have an elite offensive line in front of him that was filled with future NFL stars. In fact, the individuals protecting him seemed more like the scene from The Replacements, and he was especially vulnerable, being sacked 9 times against Ole Miss alone and a whopping 51 times throughout the season. Still, he made some really great plays with that rocket arm, all while running for his life. Willis told Fox 5 Atlanta when asked if the negative talk regarding a lackluster 2021 season got to him.
I mean, not really. They just said I was trash like a couple years ago, so I mean, it is what it is. I mean, they said I was like 123rd out of 138 starting FBS quarterbacks 2 years ago, so they can say what they want to. They can't really, get up under my skin too much.
Yet, Malik Willis has a strength that doesn't come from taking reps on the field. He has the character thing down, which is an element that creates respect by peers. 2 days prior to the Flames' win in the Lending Tree Bowl in Alabama, Liberty's defensive group was scheduled to visit the Boys and Girls Club of South Alabama. Because it was scheduled just 1 hour after the last practice, a practice that was especially grueling, the defensive linemen and safety started pulling out, saying that they did not want to attend the community service project and that they were too tired or didn't feel well. That's when Malik Willis announced, "Hey, me and the O-line will do it." Suddenly, those exhausted defensive players changed their minds and attended the Boys and Girls Club event with Malik and his O-line going as well. Those kids had twice the players to hang out with on that day thanks to the leadership of the Flames signal caller. Liberty's head coach Hugh Freeze said, recounting that story, that some guys in his position wouldn't have even played a bowl game. And here's a guy who finished like that after his last college practice. Willis would need to make a big splash in the postseason showcases to ramp up his draft stock. At the Senior Bowl in Mobile, in a driving rain and very uncomfortable conditions, scouts from all 32 NFL teams saw one quarterback whose ball zipped out of his hand like it was a sunshine-filled perfect day. That same quarterback moved with a quickness that looked like it was Lamar Jackson out there on the field in Alabama. That quarterback was Malik Willis. Everyone talked about how athletic he was, that he played much larger than his 6-foot stature, and he had just the right attitude. He was able to quickly absorb anything the coaches had to say and apply it to the very next play. Detroit Lions coach Dan Campbell said of Malik Willis during the Senior Bowl activities that, "I think he throws a nice ball. He's pretty athletic. He's built better than from afar, you don't know." That's why being able to see these guys up close, he's a good looking player, man. He's built right. He looks like he's built to last. Shoot, he handled our playbook pretty dang good yesterday. We ran a couple of run checks in there, and defensively, we had a couple of pressure looks too that I thought he handled. An AFC area scout told NFL.com he's got a freakish lower half and core for a quarterback. He looks like a running back from the waist down. That's why he's such a good runner, and that's where he generates so much power as a passer. Willis lit up the Senior Bowl game, leading both sides with 54 yards rushing, including a 27-yard run against the nation's top defenders. Then last week at the Combine, Malik Willis was the talk of Indianapolis, in a good way. During the team interviews and with his throwing, he didn't do the 40-yard dash or other drills at the Combine, but he would still wow many of NFL media and NFL head coaches. Washington Commanders head coach Ron Rivera said during an interview with CBS Sports that Malik Willis reminded him of another player that once played for him. You know what's interesting about him in particular is there are a lot of similar traits to these guys that have had success in our league, and I was fortunate enough to have drafted one of them in Cam Newton, who's a very special player. This young man has a tremendous skill set. Will some of those things he does translate? Absolutely. Will there be some things he'll have to learn and develop and grow on? Absolutely. But I can tell you, I've had the opportunity to interview him. He's a heck of a young man, man, and he shows he's got the football acumen you need to be successful in this league. One of the greatest strengths of an athlete or any person is what they do when they think no one is watching. That is what shows true character. On Thursday, before the combine drills kicked off, Malik Willis was walking around in downtown Indianapolis, going to an event in which he would soon return to his hotel room with a suitcase full of new Nike apparel. Just one of the many perks that would come to the future NFL player. The city, like many industrial cities of the North, has a homeless population that hang out on the street corners, even during the winter months, and those people are looking for spare change or anything to help. Unknowingly being videoed, Malik Willis was filmed in a clip stopping to talk with one individual that was in need, while at the same time a man in a suit passes by and ignores the person. Malik Willis was then seen handing the homeless person new clothing out of his own suitcase. The person videoing it knew it was a football player in town for the combine, but he did not know who it was until a few hours later that the Good Samaritan was identified as Malik Willis.
I was going to the Nike suite and I seen her on the way there. I ended up getting like a suitcase full of stuff, and then I went back down there to her and I had just gave her a couple things out the suitcase.
Willis, during the interviews, believes that he should be a top pick, but displays his humble attitude by sharing that he is constantly attempting to improve by focusing on his footwork and the alignment of his lower body when it comes to his throwing motion. Malik Willis says, "That's where some of the flaws in my game come from. Maybe some inaccuracies. It's just from footwork. It's not from just being inaccurate. They can just say I can't throw, whatever." During those team meeting interviews, Malik Willis was given the task to draw up plays and also talk about Liberty's concepts. He stated of the mission, "I feel real good about explaining the plays, and I feel real good about my understanding of the game. When you're prepared, it's not really stressful. It's not a situation where you feel like you're under pressure. I just feel like I was doing what I was supposed to do." Betting odds are that he will be the first quarterback drafted, but rumors state that he may not end up in Atlanta, but maybe in Pittsburgh or Seattle as a member of the Steelers or Seahawks. Either way, Malik Willis will be standing on stage in Las Vegas very soon. Also, by most accounts, it is determined that he has the leadership and character to be a very good NFL player, but it is still to be determined if he has the skills to be that top-tier quarterback, especially right away. As far as Malik Willis, he still seems to say all the right things at the right time.
You're the face of a franchise, literally. You're the face of a city, so you got to understand everything that comes with that, and making sure you're doing all the right things and making sure you know, just doing your job.